I sat alone in the grand lobby of the Cascade Mountain Resort, my 3 suitcases stacked beside me like monuments to my foolishness. My 4 children had checked in 2 hours ago with their spouses and kids. 4 rooms. Not one included me. I kept checking my phone. No texts. No calls. Carol had walked past earlier and smirked, saying, "Guess the lobby's your bed tonight, Mom." Then the front desk manager, a woman named Charlotte, approached with a key card in her hand and sympathy in her eyes. Charlotte leaned down slightly, her voice low and kind. "I've been watching this whole situation unfold, and I have to tell you, what your family just did is unacceptable. Nobody deserves to be treated this way, especially not someone who clearly traveled here to spend time with people she loves." I felt my throat tighten. I didn't trust myself to speak without crying. "Come with me," Charlotte said, extending her hand. "You deserve better than this." She helped me gather my luggage and led me to a private elevator. We rode in silence to the top floor. When the doors opened, she walked me down a quiet hallway to the very end. She slid the keycard into the door of the penthouse suite. "This is yours for the duration of your stay," she said. "No charge. Consider it a courtesy upgrade." I stepped inside and nearly gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the mountain range bathed in evening light. The living area was larger than my entire first floor back home. A king bed, with pristine white linens, sat in the bedroom, and the bathroom had a soaking tub that overlooked the valley. "I can't accept this," I whispered. "This must cost thousands per night." Charlotte smiled. "You can, and you will. I saw what happened down there. Your family owes you an apology, but until they come to their senses, at least you'll be comfortable." After she left, I unpacked slowly, trying to process everything. I hung my dresses in the massive closet, placed my toiletries in the marble bathroom, and stood at the window watching the sun set behind the mountains. My late husband, Frank, would have loved this view. We'd talked about taking a trip here for years, but his health declined before we could manage it. This whole trip was supposed to honor him. Frank died 18 months ago, and his birthday was in 3 days. I'd suggested we all gather at this resort to celebrate his life, to remember him together as a family. I paid for everyone's airfare, $12,000 total. I thought it would be a gift, a gesture of love, a way to bring everyone together during the holidays. The children had been distant since Frank's funeral, but I'd attributed it to grief. Everyone processes loss differently. I'd given them space, but when I proposed this trip 2 months ago, they'd all agreed enthusiastically. Carol even helped coordinate dates that worked for everyone. I ordered room service around 8 that evening, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, a glass of white wine. I tried to relax, tried to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation for what happened in the lobby. Maybe there'd been a booking error. Maybe they'd fix it tomorrow morning. Maybe Carol's comment was just a thoughtless joke. But around midnight, I heard loud voices in the hallway outside my suite. I set down the book I'd been pretending to read and moved quietly to the door. Through the peephole, I could see my son Thomas and his wife Amanda standing near the elevator, speaking with Charlotte. Thomas's face was red with anger. I cracked the door open just an inch to hear better. "I specifically requested the penthouse when we booked," Thomas was saying, his voice tight with frustration. "I called 3 times to confirm. And you gave it to that woman instead?" Charlotte's voice remained professional and firm. "The penthouse became available, and I assigned it to a guest who needed it. Your reservation was for a standard suite, which you received." "That woman is my mother," Thomas spat the words. "She doesn't need a penthouse. She needs to learn that she can't manipulate people anymore." Amanda put a hand on his arm, trying to calm him, but he shook her off. "You had no right," he continued. "I want to speak to your supervisor." "I'm the senior manager on duty tonight," Charlotte replied calmly. "And my decision stands." Thomas stared at her for a long moment, then turned and stalked back toward the elevator. Amanda followed, glancing back apologetically at Charlotte. I closed my door silently, my heart pounding. Manipulate people? What did that mean? And why was Thomas so angry about the room? We'd never discussed the penthouse. I didn't even know he'd wanted it. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Around 2 in the morning, I heard Charlotte's voice in the hallway again, quieter this time. She was on her phone. "Yes, the family treating her that way," she was saying. "It's even worse than we thought. I saw the legal documents they were carrying. I think they're planning something." "Legal documents?" My chest tightened. "What kind of documents?" I opened my door again, but Charlotte had already moved down the hallway, her voice fading. I stood there in my nightgown, feeling suddenly cold despite the suite's perfect temperature. Back inside, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my messages, looking for anything I might have missed. That's when I saw it. A screenshot Carol had accidentally sent me earlier that day. I'd glanced at it briefly before we boarded our flights and forgotten about it in the chaos of travel. I opened it now and felt my blood turn to ice. It was a group text thread between my 4 children. I wasn't included in the thread, but Carol had sent me a screenshot by mistake, probably meaning to send it to one of her siblings. The message read, "Mom can't know about the meeting with the lawyer tomorrow at 10 a.m. Keep her distracted. Once she signs, everything's settled." Below that, Thomas had replied, "Agreed. No hints. Act normal." Patricia had added, "What if she asks questions?" Carol's response, "She won't. She's too eager to play happy family. Just smile and keep her away from the business center." I read the messages 3 times, my hands shaking. A lawyer meeting? What was I supposed to sign? Why was I being kept in the dark about something that clearly involved me? I tried calling Thomas. It went straight to voicemail. I tried Carol, same thing. Benjamin and Patricia didn't answer either. I sat on the edge of the enormous bed, feeling very small and very afraid. Outside, the mountains stood silent and dark against the star-filled sky. Inside, my mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. What were they planning? And why did they need me to sign something without knowing what it was? I barely slept. By 6:30 in the morning, I was dressed and heading down to the hotel restaurant. If my children had a meeting at 10, I'd watch them. I'd figure out what was happening. The restaurant had a rustic elegance, all exposed beams and stone fireplaces. I chose a table in the corner with a clear view of the entrance and ordered coffee. My hands were still shaking slightly as I wrapped them around the warm mug. At 7:15, they arrived. All 4 of my children, their spouses trailing behind with sleepy kids in tow. They took a large table near the windows. I watched as they settled the grandchildren with coloring books and tablets, then huddled together at one end, speaking in low voices. Carol was gesturing emphatically. Thomas kept shaking his head. Patricia looked worried. Benjamin, my youngest at 33, kept glancing around the restaurant as if afraid of being overheard. I stood and walked over to their table. The conversation stopped abruptly. "Good morning," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Mind if I join you?" The silence stretched out uncomfortably. Carol's daughter Emma, who was 6, looked up from her coloring and said brightly, "Grandma, you can sit by me." "Not right now, sweetie," Carol said quickly. "Grandma probably wants to eat alone. You know how she likes her quiet mornings." "That's not true," I said. "I'd love to sit with my family." Patricia shifted in her seat. "We were actually just about to take the kids skiing, Mom. We need to get them to the equipment rental before the lines get too long. It's 7:30 in the morning, I pointed out. The rental shop doesn't open until 8. Thomas stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. We're trying to have a family breakfast. Without you, is that clear enough? The other diners had started to notice. I felt heat rise to my face, but I stood my ground. What's the lawyer meeting about? I asked directly. The table went silent. Carol's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Benjamin looked like he might be sick. How did you? Carol started, then her eyes narrowed. Have you been spying on us? You sent me a screenshot by accident yesterday, I said. I saw the group text. Thomas stepped closer to me, his voice dropping to an angry whisper. This is exactly why we can't trust you anymore, Mom. Always manipulative, always playing the victim, always snooping where you don't belong. I felt like I'd been slapped. Manipulative? I repeated. Carol set down her coffee cup with a sharp clink. Since you clearly know already, yes. We have a meeting with Attorney Douglas Hartwell at 10 about Dad's estate. But your father's estate was settled months ago, I said, confused. Everything was divided fairly. The will was executed exactly as Frank wanted. That's what you say, Thomas shot back. But we found documents showing Dad wanted to change his will before he died. He wanted to leave you only the house and split his business assets among the 4 of us. But you convinced him not to. You manipulated a dying man. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. That's absolutely not true, I said, my voice breaking. Where did you hear this? Aunt Helen told us everything, Patricia said quietly. She showed us the papers. Aunt Helen, Frank's sister. We'd had a falling out 5 years ago when she'd accused me of turning Frank against his family. The truth was that Helen had borrowed money from Frank repeatedly, money she never paid back. When Frank finally told her he couldn't lend her anymore, she'd blamed me. She said I was controlling the finances, isolating Frank from his family, poisoning him against his own sister. We hadn't spoken since. Helen has been lying to you, I said desperately. Whatever she told you, whatever papers she showed you, they're not real. Your father's will was what he wanted. I never influenced him. I never manipulated him. Carol laughed, a harsh sound. Of course you'd say that. But we have proof, Mom. We have witnesses. Helen is going to testify that you isolated Dad from his family, that you controlled his medications when he was sick, that you influenced his decisions when he was too weak to think clearly. The room seemed to tilt. They were accusing me of elder abuse, of manipulating Frank during his illness. These were serious accusations, the kind that could destroy reputations, the kind that suggested criminal behavior. This is insane, I whispered. I took care of your father. I loved him. I would never. Save it, Thomas interrupted. You can either cooperate or we'll take you to court. The meeting this morning is to give you a chance to do the right thing. We have a document prepared. You sign over a portion of Dad's business holdings, the amount he actually intended for us, and we can all move on. How much? I asked. $1.2 million, Carol said flatly, split 4 ways among us. That's almost half of everything, I said, my voice rising. You want me to just hand over more than $1 million based on lies Helen told you? They're not lies, Patricia said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. We've seen the draft will. We've seen Dad's handwriting. It's real, Mom. Thomas leaned in close. Here's how this works. You meet us at Hartwell's office at 10. You sign the papers voluntarily. Or we file a lawsuit contesting the will, and we drag you through court. Helen will testify. We'll present evidence that you isolated Dad, controlled him, manipulated him when he was dying. Even if we don't win, the legal fees alone will bankrupt you. And your reputation? Everyone will know what you did. I looked at each of my children in turn. Carol's face was hard and closed. Thomas radiated anger. Patricia looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Benjamin was staring at his plate. These were my babies. I'd raised them, loved them, sacrificed for them, and they were threatening to destroy me based on lies from a woman who'd never forgiven Frank for cutting off her access to his money. I won't sign anything, I said quietly, because I didn't do what you're accusing me of. And if you take me to court, the truth will come out. Carol smiled coldly. Your funeral, Mom. Literally. Because when we're done, you'll have nothing left. No money, no reputation, nothing. She gathered her purse and stood. Come on, everyone. Let's get the kids to the slopes. We'll see Mom at the lawyer's office, if she has the courage to show up. They filed out, the grandchildren waving goodbye to me innocently, unaware of what their parents were planning. I stood alone in the restaurant, my coffee cold, my world crumbling. I needed help, real legal help, and I needed it fast. Back in my suite, I grabbed my laptop and searched frantically for lawyers in Cascade Falls. Most of the results were for firms in Denver, 2 hours away. But I finally found one local attorney, Martin Green, practicing family and estate law. His website looked professional. He had 20 years of experience. His office was downtown, just 15 minutes from the resort. I called. A receptionist answered, and after I explained my situation was urgent, she said Mr. Green had a cancellation that afternoon. Could I come at 2? I agreed immediately. I spent the next few hours trying to gather any documents I had on my phone. Photos of Frank's will, bank statements, the estate settlement papers, anything that might help prove my case. Around noon, Charlotte called my room. She'd heard from the restaurant staff about the confrontation that morning. Was I okay? I broke down and told her everything. The accusations. The lawyer meeting my children had planned without me. The threats. Charlotte's voice turned hard. This is financial elder abuse. I've seen it before. Families turning on elderly parents, trying to force them to sign over assets. She paused. I get off shift at 1. Let me drive you to this lawyer's office. You shouldn't go alone. I felt a wave of gratitude. Charlotte barely knew me, yet she was offering more support than my own children. At 1:30, we drove downtown in Charlotte's car. Cascade Falls was a picturesque mountain town, all ski shops and art galleries and breweries. Martin Green's office was above a coffee shop, a small suite with a frosted glass door. Inside, a middle-aged receptionist greeted us and showed me to Martin's office. Charlotte came with me. Martin Green was in his late 50s, graying at the temples, wearing an expensive-looking suit. He had a firm handshake and a reassuring smile. He gestured for us to sit in the leather chairs across from his desk. Tell me everything, he said, pulling out a legal pad. I explained the situation, the trip to honor Frank, my children's coldness, the overheard conversation about the lawyer meeting, the accusations of manipulation and elder abuse, the demand that I sign over $1.2 million. Martin listened carefully, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he asked to see the documents I'd brought. I showed him the photos on my phone. He examined them for several minutes. This is clearly a shakedown, he finally said. Your children have no legal standing. The will was properly executed, witnessed, and notarized. Colorado law is very clear on this. Even if a draft will existed, drafts mean nothing legally. What matters is the final, signed, notarized will. which you have." I felt relief wash over me. "So they can't force me to sign anything?" "Absolutely not," Martin said. "However, fighting this could cost you. If they actually file a lawsuit, you'll need to defend yourself. Legal fees in a contested will case can run between $80,000 and $100,000, maybe more if it drags on." My relief evaporated. "I don't have that kind of money just sitting around," I said. Martin nodded sympathetically. "Most people don't, which is often what these family members count on. They know the threat of legal fees alone can force compliance." He leaned back in his chair. "I can represent you. I'd need a $50,000 retainer by end of business today to start preparing for this meeting tomorrow and any potential lawsuit. With that, I can attend the meeting with Attorney Hartwell, make it clear you're represented, and shut down any attempt to intimidate you. $50,000 by today." I felt dizzy. "I'd need to wire it from my bank," I said slowly. "Can I make that call now?" "Of course," Martin said. "Take your time." He handed me his banking information on a business card. I dialed my bank while Charlotte squeezed my hand supportively. The bank representative answered. I explained I needed to wire $50,000 and began to give her the information. "Please hold while I verify the account," she said. While I waited on hold, Martin excused himself. "I need to take another call," he said. "I'll just be in the conference room. 2 minutes." He left his office, closing the door behind him. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to hold music. Charlotte was looking at her own phone, scrolling through messages. Then I noticed Martin's computer screen. He'd been working on something before we arrived and hadn't closed it or turned off the monitor. An email was open. From the angle where I sat, I could read it clearly. The sender was listed as H. Brennan. The subject line read, "She took the bait." My heart started pounding. I leaned forward slightly to read the message. "Helen Brennan to Martin Green. She took the bait. Keep her busy and confused tomorrow morning. Make sure she doesn't attend our meeting with Hartwell. We'll have her signature by noon. The notary is ready. Once she transfers the $50,000 to you, split it 60-40, as discussed. Thanks for your help with this. Frank's widow doesn't know what's coming." The phone fell from my hand. Charlotte looked up. "What's wrong?" I pointed at the computer screen with a shaking finger. She came around the desk to look, then sucked in a sharp breath. Martin Green wasn't a real lawyer working for me. He was working with Helen. This whole thing was a trap. The $50,000 retainer wasn't to protect me. It was to drain my bank account before they forced me to sign whatever documents they'd prepared. The bank representative's voice came through the phone, tinny and distant. "Ma'am, are you still there? I have the account verified. Would you like to proceed with the wire transfer?" Charlotte grabbed my phone. "Cancel that," she said firmly. "Do not process any transfer." "Thank you." She ended the call. We could hear Martin's voice in the conference room, talking to someone. We had maybe a minute before he came back. "Act normal," Charlotte whispered. "We need to get out of here without him knowing we saw that email." She quickly took a photo of the computer screen with her phone. Then we sat back down, just as Martin opened the door and returned to his desk. "Everything okay with the bank?" he asked pleasantly. I forced myself to smile. "Yes, but there's a daily transfer limit I forgot about. I'll need to come back tomorrow to complete it. Can I do that first thing in the morning?" Martin's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "I really need that retainer today to start working on your case." "I understand, but the bank won't budge on their policies," I said, standing. "I'll be back at 8 tomorrow morning with a cashier's check instead. Will that work?" Martin clearly wasn't happy, but he nodded. "I suppose it'll have to. Don't be late. We need to be prepared before you meet with your children." Charlotte and I walked out of his office and down the stairs to the street. We didn't speak until we were in her car with the doors locked. Then I started shaking. "He's part of it," I said. "Helen set this whole thing up. She found a corrupt lawyer willing to scam me. They were going to take my $50,000 and still force me to sign over the rest." Charlotte's hands were white, knuckled on the steering wheel. "We need to call the police." "And tell them what?" I asked. "That I saw an email on someone's computer? They'll say I was snooping. Martin will deny everything. The email will mysteriously disappear. Then what do we do?" "I don't know," I whispered. "The meeting with the real estate lawyer Hartwell is tomorrow at 10. If I don't show up, my children will proceed without me. If I do show up, I'll be walking into whatever trap Helen has set." We drove back to the resort in silence. My phone buzzed. A text from Carol. "See you at Hartwell's office tomorrow, Mom. 10 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." As if I were invited. As if this were normal. Charlotte pulled into the resort parking lot and turned to me. "You're not alone in this. I'll help you figure it out. Let me make some calls tonight. I have a friend in Denver who's a real attorney. Someone we can trust." I wanted to believe help was possible, but the trap was closing around me, and I had less than 20 hours to figure out how to escape it. Charlotte dropped me at the resort and promised to call once she'd reached her attorney friend in Denver. I went up to the Penthouse suite, my sanctuary that now felt like a cage. I tried to think clearly. Helen had orchestrated an elaborate scheme involving a corrupt lawyer, false accusations, and manipulated documents. My own children believed I'd abused their father. Tomorrow they expected me to sign away over $1 million. Around 8 that evening, Charlotte called my room. "Good news," she said. "My friend Sandra is an estate attorney in Denver. She can do a video call with you tonight. 9 o'clock? Can you do that?" "Yes," I said, relief flooding through me. "Thank you, Charlotte. I'm texting you the conference link," she said. "And one more thing. I checked the State Bar Association website. Martin Green was disbarred 3 years ago for fraud and misrepresentation. He's not allowed to practice law in Colorado. So, everything he told me was illegal," I said. "Everything," Charlotte confirmed. "Sandra will explain your options tonight." At 9, I logged into the video conference. Sandra appeared on my screen, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. We talked for over an hour. She reviewed the documents I had, asked detailed questions about Frank's will and estate, and took notes on everything that had happened. Finally, she sat back in her chair. "Joann, this is a clear case of fraud and conspiracy. Your children are victims of Helen's manipulation, but they're also complicit in attempting to coerce you. You haven't done anything wrong. Frank's will is ironclad. If you don't want to sign anything tomorrow, you don't have to." "But how do I stop them?" I asked. "If I go to that meeting, they'll pressure me. If I don't go, they'll proceed without me and possibly file a lawsuit anyway." Sandra thought for a moment. "Here's what I recommend. Don't go to the meeting. Instead, tomorrow morning, file a police report about Martin Green's attempted fraud. With Charlotte's photo of that email, you have evidence. Also file a report about Helen's conspiracy to defraud you. Get ahead of this. Then send your children a formal cease and desist letter through me. I'll draft it tonight and email it to you. You can have the Hotel Business Center print and send it via courier to Hartwell's office, timed to arrive right at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Will that stop them?" I asked. "It'll put them on notice that you're not playing their game," Sandra said. "And it'll create a legal paper trail. If they proceed with a lawsuit after that, They'll be doing so knowing you have legal representation and evidence of their conspiracy." We ended the call. Sandra emailed me the cease and desist letter within an hour. It was strong and clear. I would not be attending any meetings. I would not be signing any documents. Any further harassment would be met with legal action. It named Martin Green as a co-conspirator and warned that his involvement constituted fraud. I felt hope for the first time in days. But then my phone buzzed. An email from Benjamin, my youngest, sent only to me, not to the group. "Mom, I can't do this anymore. Meet me at the Pine Ridge Trail parking lot at 7 p.m. Come alone. I need to tell you everything. I'm sorry." I read it 3 times. Benjamin had always been the sensitive one, the child most like Frank, gentle, thoughtful. If anyone was having second thoughts, it would be him. I texted Charlotte and told her about the email. She called immediately. "It could be a trap," she warned. "I know," I said. "But what if it's real? What if Benjamin actually wants to help me? Then he can come to the resort and talk to you here, in public," Charlotte said. "Why does it have to be some isolated parking lot?" She had a point. But something in Benjamin's message felt genuine. "I'm going," I said, "but I'll keep my phone on. If you don't hear from me by 7:30, call the police." Charlotte tried to talk me out of it, but I was determined. This was my son, my baby. If there was even a chance he was breaking away from Helen's influence, I had to take it. At 6:45, I drove my rental car to Pine Ridge Trail. It was a 15-minute drive from the resort, up a winding mountain road. The parking lot was small and empty, surrounded by pine trees. The sun was setting, casting long shadows. Benjamin's car was there. He was leaning against it, looking miserable. I parked and got out slowly. Benjamin straightened when he saw me. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." "Tell me what's happening," I said. He looked around as if afraid someone might overhear, then started talking fast. "Helen came to us 6 months ago, right around the time we were all struggling with losing Dad. She had this draft will. She had medical records. She had bank statements showing payments to her that Dad supposedly didn't want to make. She said you'd manipulated Dad, controlled him, isolated him from his family. She said you'd convinced him to cut us out of his business assets." "None of that is true," I said. "I know," Benjamin whispered. "I know that now. Today, I looked at those medical records more carefully. They're fake, Mom. The doctor's signature is forged. The dates don't match Dad's actual treatment timeline. Helen created false documents." "Then why did you all believe her?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Because we wanted to," he said, tears streaming down his face. "We were angry. We were grieving. We felt like Dad loved you more than us, like you got all his time and attention while he was sick. When Helen showed us these papers and said you'd stolen our inheritance, it was easier to believe that than to accept that maybe Dad just didn't leave us as much as we thought we deserved." I felt tears on my own cheeks. "So what happens now?" Benjamin shook his head. "That's why I asked you here. Helen's plan is worse than you think. The meeting tomorrow with Hartwell isn't about negotiating. They've already forged your signature on documents. Hartwell's not even a real estate lawyer. He's another person Helen paid off. Tomorrow's meeting is just theater, to make it look legitimate. Helen's going to file those forged documents with the court before you even know what happened." My legs felt weak. "So even if I don't show up—" "It won't matter," Benjamin said. "She's already got your signature. I don't know how, but she does." "That's forgery," I said. "That's a felony." Benjamin nodded. "I know, and I'm terrified because I'm part of it now. I helped her. I knew something was wrong, but I went along with it anyway. Mom, I don't know what to do. We need to call the police, I said. Right now. You'll tell them everything. You'll testify against Helen. It's the only way to stop this. Benjamin was about to respond when headlights cut through the darkness. 3 cars pulled into the parking lot, surrounding us. My heart stopped. Carol, Thomas, Patricia, their spouses, and Aunt Helen emerged from the cars. Benjamin looked genuinely shocked. I didn't tell them, he said. I swear, Mom, I didn't. Helen approached, smiling coldly. You think I'd trust the weak link? I've been tracking your phone for weeks, Benjamin. The moment you emailed your mother, I knew. Nice try at betraying us. This has gone far enough, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I'm calling the police. I reached for my phone, but Thomas moved quickly and grabbed my wrist. You're not calling anyone, he said. Helen walked closer, pulling papers from her purse. Here's how this works, Joann. You're going to sign these documents right now. We have a notary waiting in the car. You sign over the business assets. You sign power of attorney forms for your personal accounts. And you walk away with the house and enough to live on. Or what? I asked. Or we call the police ourselves, Helen said. We tell them you assaulted Benjamin, that you lured him here and attacked him when he refused to go along with your schemes. We'll show them Benjamin's injuries. She glanced at my youngest son. Benjamin, show your mother what we practiced. Benjamin looked horrified. No, he said. I'm not doing this. Carol stepped forward. Then you're out, Benjamin. Out of the family, out of the inheritance, out of everything. Patricia started crying. Please, Mom, just sign. We don't want this to get ugly. It's already ugly, I said. This is extortion. This is fraud. This is... Thomas tightened his grip on my wrist. This is you having 2 choices. Sign and keep your freedom, or refuse and spend tonight in jail on assault charges. By tomorrow, we'll have emergency conservatorship over you for mental instability. We'll take everything anyway. You'll lose your freedom and your money. So really, there's only one smart choice here. I looked around. We were in an isolated parking lot, surrounded by mountains. There was no cell service out here. No one could hear me scream. My own children, the babies I'd raised and loved, were threatening me with arrest, with false accusations, with losing my freedom. Carol's husband positioned himself by my car, blocking it in. I was trapped. Helen produced a pen and held it out to me. Last chance, Joann. Sign, or we make the call. The notary, an older man I didn't recognize, stepped forward with an official-looking stamp. I tried to catch Benjamin's eye, but he was staring at the ground, tears streaming down his face. I was out of options, or so I thought. Then, like a miracle, more headlights appeared on the mountain road. A hotel security vehicle, followed by 2 police cars with lights flashing, pulled into the parking lot. Charlotte stepped out of the security vehicle. Behind her came 2 uniformed officers. Charlotte must have followed me. She must have suspected I'd need help. What's going on here? One of the officers asked, his hand resting casually on his belt. Helen's expression smoothed instantly into something pleasant. Officer, this is just a family matter. We're having a discussion about estate planning with my sister-in-law. Carol jumped in, her voice taking on a concerned tone. Our mother has been showing signs of confusion lately. We're worried about her mental state. She drove erratically up here, and we followed to make sure she was safe. The officer looked at me. Ma'am, are you all right? I opened my mouth to explain, but Helen was faster. She's been under a lot of stress since her husband died, Helen said sympathetically. We're just trying to help her make good decisions about her finances before she does something she'll regret." The officer's expression softened slightly. He was buying it. Charlotte stepped forward. "Officer, I'm Charlotte Davies, Guest Services Manager at Cascade Mountain Resort. Joann has been a guest for 3 days. She's been completely lucid and appropriate the entire time. Earlier today, I personally drove her to a lawyer's office because she was seeking legal advice about a family dispute. That's not the behavior of someone who's confused." The second officer, a woman, pulled out a notepad. "What kind of family dispute?" Before I could answer, Helen produced her phone. "Officer, I have text messages from Joann over the past few months. They're erratic, confused. She's accused us of terrible things. We're concerned she's becoming paranoid." She showed the officer her phone screen. I caught a glimpse. The messages looked like they were from me, but I'd never sent them. Helen had faked them. Patricia, crying now, added, "We just want to help our mother. We're not trying to hurt her." The male officer looked between Helen and me, clearly uncertain. Charlotte pulled out her own phone. "Officer, I also have something to show you. This afternoon, Joann went to meet with someone, claiming to be an attorney named Martin Green. I secretly photographed his computer screen while we were there. The email on his screen proves he's working with this woman, Helen, to defraud Joann." She showed them the photo. Both officers leaned in to read it. Helen's pleasant expression faltered. That's an invasion of privacy. Whatever Charlotte thinks she saw, it's out of context. The female officer looked at Helen. "This email mentions getting Joann's signature by noon and splitting money. That doesn't sound like helping a confused family member. That sounds like fraud." Helen recovered quickly. "That email is about legitimate legal fees. Martin is a trusted family attorney, helping us navigate a complex estate issue." Charlotte spoke up again. "I also contacted the Colorado State Bar Association today. Martin Green was disbarred 3 years ago. He's not allowed to practice law. Why would your family direct Joann to a fake lawyer?" The officers exchanged glances. The mood in the parking lot had shifted. "I'd like to ask everyone to come down to the station and give statements," the female officer said. "We need to sort this out properly." "That's unnecessary," Thomas said quickly. "We don't want to involve the police in a family matter." "Too late," the male officer said. "When we see potential fraud and elder abuse, we're obligated to investigate." "Elder abuse?" Carol's voice rose. "We're not abusing anyone. We're trying to protect our mother from herself." "Then you won't mind coming to the station and explaining that officially," the female officer said. As the officers were organizing everyone to head to the station, I noticed the notary. He'd been silent this entire time, standing near one of the cars. Now he was backing away slowly, trying to slip into the shadows. Thomas noticed, too. He crossed the parking lot quickly and spoke to the notary in an urgent whisper. Suddenly, the notary clutched his chest. He staggered and fell to his knees, gasping. Everyone rushed toward him. It looked like a heart attack. In the chaos, I saw Thomas move to my rental car. He opened the passenger door and grabbed my purse from the seat. Inside was my ID, my credit cards, my insurance information, and most importantly, my copy of Frank's actual will. "Thomas!" I shouted, but he was already running to his car. He jumped in and sped out of the parking lot before anyone could stop him. The female officer ran toward her patrol car to pursue him, but Thomas had a head start and knew these mountain roads. Meanwhile, the notary was sitting up now, looking embarrassed. "I'm fine," he said. "I'm so sorry," I thought. "It was just a panic attack, I think." The male officer looked at him suspiciously. That was convenient timing. The notary wouldn't meet his eyes. Thomas paid me $500 to create a diversion if things went wrong. I'm sorry. I'm not proud of it. The officer shook his head in disgust. Everyone in my patrol car. We're going to the station. Now. But my purse, I said desperately. Thomas took my ID, my bank cards, everything. We'll get it back, the officer promised. We've already called for backup to locate his vehicle. But I knew Thomas. He was smart, and he was panicking. What was he going to do with my identification? With my copy of the will? Nothing good. The police station in Cascade Falls was small but efficient. They separated us into different rooms to give statements. I sat in a gray interview room with Charlotte beside me and the female officer who'd introduced herself as Detective Sarah Brennan. Detective Brennan was experienced, patient, and thorough. She asked me to start from the beginning. I told her everything. The trip to honor Frank, the children booking 4 rooms without including me, Charlotte's kindness in giving me the penthouse. Overhearing the conversation about a lawyer meeting, the group text I'd accidentally seen, the confrontation at breakfast, finding Martin Green, the email on his computer, Benjamin's request to meet, the trap at the parking lot. Detective Brennan took detailed notes. Then she asked to see Frank's will and the estate documents. I pulled up the digital copies I'd saved to my cloud storage. She reviewed them carefully. This will is properly executed, she said. Witnessed, notarized, filed with the probate court. Everything's legitimate. She looked up at me. What does your sister-in-law, Helen, have to gain by challenging it? That's what I don't understand, I said. Frank left her some money in the will. $20,000. It wasn't nothing. Detective Brennan pulled out her laptop and started searching public records. After several minutes, she frowned. Helen Brennan. Does she own a business? She used to, I said. A boutique in Boulder, but I think it closed a few years ago. She and Frank had some kind of disagreement about it before that. Detective Brennan turned her laptop toward me. According to these court records, Helen borrowed $300,000 from Frank 8 years ago to save her business. She signed a promissory note. But the business failed anyway. I didn't know the exact amount, but I knew Frank had lent her money. He was always generous with family. Detective Brennan scrolled through more documents. Here's the interesting part. In Frank's will, it says all debts owed to him by family members are forgiven upon his death. That would include Helen's debt. With the will as written, she doesn't owe you anything. But if the will is invalidated, I asked slowly, then that debt forgiveness disappears, Detective Brennan said. She'd owe you, as Frank's heir, $300,000, plus interest over 8 years. She paused. Helen's not trying to get money for your children. She's trying to destroy the will so she doesn't have to pay her debt. Everything clicked into place. Helen had manipulated my children, fed them lies, created fake documents, all to serve her own purposes. The children thought they were recovering stolen inheritance. Really, they were helping Helen avoid a massive debt. I need to bring Helen in here, Detective Brennan said. She left the room. Charlotte reached over and squeezed my hand. You're doing great, she said. The truth is coming out. 20 minutes later, Detective Brennan returned. Helen was in another interview room, asking for a lawyer. That's her right, Detective Brennan said. But I've also been talking to your children. Benjamin has agreed to give a full statement. He's terrified, but he's cooperating. What about the others? I asked. Thomas is still missing with your purse. We've got units looking for his car. Carol and Patricia are insisting they were just trying to help you, that Helen had convinced them you were the bad guy. But they threatened me, I said. They tried to force me to sign documents. I know, Detective Brennan said gently. And we're treating this as attempted fraud and elder abuse. But your children are going to claim they were victims of Helen's manipulation. Were they? I asked bitterly. Or did they choose to believe the worst about me because it gave them an excuse to take my money? That's something you'll have to work out with them, Detective Brennan said. But legally, we have enough to charge Helen with fraud, conspiracy, and attempted theft by deception. Martin Green will be charged as an accomplice. As for your children, the prosecutor will decide. Since they're first-time offenders and can argue they were manipulated, they might not face criminal charges. So Helen gets punished, but my kids walk free, even after everything they did? Justice isn't always satisfying, Detective Brennan said, but at least the fraud will be stopped. Around 2 a.m, we got news. Thomas had been pulled over about 40 miles away. He'd been driving erratically, clearly panicking. When the officers searched his car, they found my purse. Everything was still inside, except for one thing. My copy of Frank's will was gone. Thomas claimed he'd thrown it out his car window miles back. Without that physical copy, and with the original filed with the court, it didn't matter much. But it showed his intent to destroy evidence. Detective Brennan interviewed Thomas next. I wasn't allowed to be present, but she told me later what he said. Thomas was angry at Helen for lying, angry at himself for believing her, and angry at me. He told me your husband favored you, Detective Brennan relayed, that Frank always took your side in family disputes, that you and Frank had a perfect marriage and he felt like an outsider in his own family. That's not true, I whispered. Maybe not objectively, Detective Brennan said, but it was his perception. Helen exploited that. She told him you'd convinced Frank to leave him less money. She knew exactly what emotional buttons to push. Over the next several hours, Benjamin gave his full statement. He detailed how Helen had approached them, what documents she'd shown them, what promises she'd made. He admitted to helping forge some of the paperwork, though he claimed Helen had done most of it. Patricia eventually broke down and admitted she'd known something was wrong but went along with it because Carol was so sure. Carol refused to give a statement without a lawyer present. By dawn, Helen was formally charged. Martin Green was brought in from his home and charged as well. The prosecutor decided not to charge my children criminally, but informed them they could face civil lawsuits from me if I chose to pursue them. Detective Brennan drove Charlotte and me back to the resort as the sun rose over the mountains. I was exhausted, emotionally destroyed. My children had believed I was capable of elder abuse, manipulation, fraud. They'd threatened me, trapped me, tried to force me to sign away everything I had. And even though the legal system was working, even though Helen would face consequences, my family was shattered. Back in the penthouse suite, I collapsed on the bed and finally let myself cry. Charlotte sat with me, not saying anything, just being present. After a long time, I whispered, "Even if I win legally, I've lost everything that matters." "You've lost people who chose to hurt you," Charlotte said gently. "That's not the same as losing everything." "But they're my children," I said. "I know," Charlotte replied. "And that makes it so much worse. But Joann, you're still here. You're still standing. You survived something that would have broken a lot of people." I didn't feel strong. I felt demolished. But Charlotte was right about one thing. I was still here. 3 weeks passed before I felt ready to go home to Boulder. Helen's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor was firm. Helen was charged with multiple counts of fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and theft by deception. Martin Green took a plea deal and testified against her. In exchange for his testimony, his sentence was reduced to 2 years. Helen's trial moved quickly. Benjamin and I both testified. The forensic document examiner proved the draft will and medical records were recent forgeries. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Helen was sentenced to 4 years in prison plus restitution of $78,000 to me for legal fees and emotional damages. The judge was particularly harsh in her sentencing statement, saying that exploiting family grief for financial gain was unconscionable. The $300,000 debt Helen owed Frank's estate was still valid. When she got out of prison, she'd still owe that money. With interest, it would be even more. His scheme had destroyed her completely. As for my children, the legal consequences were civil, not criminal. But the personal consequences were devastating. Benjamin came to see me before I left Cascade Falls. We met in the hotel restaurant, the same place where they'd all confronted me 3 weeks earlier. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I just wanted you to know that I've started therapy, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to understand how I let Helen manipulate me like that." "Why did you believe her?" I asked. That's what I keep coming back to. Why was it so easy for you all to believe I'd hurt your father? Benjamin stared at his coffee. I think because it was easier than admitting we felt guilty. We weren't there much when Dad was sick. We let you handle everything. The doctor appointments, the medication schedules, the hospice arrangements. We told ourselves we had jobs and kids and lives. But really, it was just hard to watch him die. So we stayed away. And then after he was gone, we felt guilty. When Helen said you'd manipulated him, it was like she was giving us permission to be angry at you instead of at ourselves. I felt tears in my eyes. You could have just talked to me. "I know," Benjamin whispered. "I know that now." I looked at my youngest son, my baby, and felt the weight of everything that had happened. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said honestly. "Not yet, maybe not ever. But I'm willing to try to rebuild something, if you're serious about doing the work." "I am," Benjamin said quickly. "I'll do family therapy, individual therapy, whatever you need." We left it there. No promises, no guarantees. Just the possibility of someday maybe finding a way forward. Patricia sent me a letter. She apologized for going along with the plan, for not questioning Helen's evidence more carefully, for not defending me. She asked if we could talk sometime, maybe for coffee, when I was ready. I wasn't ready, but I kept the letter. Thomas was silent. His wife Laura called me once to apologize for not stopping him. She said she'd tried to talk him out of the plan, but he wouldn't listen. They were separated now. She was filing for divorce. She said Thomas's behavior during those 3 days at the resort had shown her a side of him she couldn't live with. I felt sad for Laura. She'd been caught in the middle of something ugly. As for Carol, I received a letter from her lawyer. Not an apology. A demand letter claiming I owed her an apology for causing family turmoil. She insisted that she'd been acting in good faith to protect Frank's legacy and that I'd overreacted by involving the police. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say to someone so committed to their own righteousness. My own lawyer helped me revise my will. My children were no longer primary beneficiaries. Instead, my estate would be divided among charities that worked with elder abuse victims. I set aside small educational trusts for my grandchildren, the innocent victims of their parents' choices. But for Carol, Thomas, Patricia, and even Benjamin, they would receive only token amounts, $1 each. Just enough to prove I hadn't forgotten them. I'd simply chosen to leave my legacy to people who actually needed help. Back home in Boulder, I joined a support group for elder abuse survivors. The first meeting was hard. Hearing other people's stories of family betrayal made me realize I wasn't alone. Adult children stealing from aging parents was heartbreakingly common. I started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping other seniors navigate disputes with family members. I understood what they were going through in a way most people couldn't. And Charlotte and I stayed in touch. We talked on the phone every week. She sent me care packages with Colorado specialties, little reminders that kindness existed in the world. One package included a note that made me cry. It said, "You deserved that penthouse, and you deserved so much more. When you're ready, come back to Cascade Mountain Resort as my personal guest. Let's make better memories here." I wasn't ready yet, but someday I would be. The legal settlement took months to finalize. Helen's restitution money came through. It wasn't about the money, really. It was about accountability, about proving that what they'd tried to do to me was wrong. 6 months after that terrible trip, Benjamin and I had our first family therapy session. It was brutal. The therapist, a woman named Rachel, didn't let either of us hide behind comfortable narratives. She made Benjamin confront how he'd chosen to believe Helen instead of talking to me directly. She made me confront how I'd sometimes used guilt as a tool in our relationship, even if unintentionally. We both cried through most of the session, but at the end, Benjamin asked if we could try again next week. I said yes. It's been a year now since that trip to Cascade Falls. Benjamin and I meet for coffee once a month. We're not close like we used to be. Maybe we never will be again. But we're honest with each other now in a way we never were before. Patricia and I text occasionally. Surface-level stuff. How the grandkids are doing. Holiday plans. Nothing deep. Maybe that's all we'll ever have, and I'm learning to be okay with that. Thomas and I haven't spoken. I've heard through mutual friends that he's struggled with what happened, that he's in therapy, that he regrets his actions. But he hasn't reached out, and I haven't either. Some bridges burn so completely there's nothing left to rebuild on. Carol sent me one final letter, 6 months ago. In it, she doubled down. She said I'd always been manipulative, always played the victim, always turned people against each other. She said she wanted nothing to do with me ever again. I burned that letter in my fireplace and felt something release. As for Helen, she's serving her sentence. I heard through the legal grapevine that she's tried twice to appeal her conviction. Both appeals were denied. She'll serve the full 4 years. When she gets out, she'll still owe me $300,000. I've already decided I'll never pursue collecting it. The debt exists on paper, a reminder of what she tried to do, but I don't need her money. I just needed her to face consequences. I think often about that night in the hotel lobby, sitting there alone, surrounded by my luggage, feeling humiliated and small. My daughter's mocking words echoing in my head. "Guess the lobby's your bed tonight, Mom." I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but Charlotte saw me. A stranger who'd worked the front desk for probably years, dealing with entitled guests and difficult situations, took one look at me and decided I deserved better. That simple act of kindness, upgrading me to the penthouse, set everything in motion. If I'd just accepted the cruelty and slept in the lobby, if I'd made myself small and quiet and accommodating, I never would have overheard Thomas's angry conversation with Charlotte. I never would have seen that text message about the lawyer meeting. I never would have discovered the conspiracy. Sometimes being pushed to your lowest point is exactly what you need to find your strength. The penthouse wasn't just a room. It was a reminder that I deserved dignity, respect, and kindness, that I didn't have to accept cruelty just because it came from family. I've learned so much this past year. I've learned that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. I've learned that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you love most. I've learned that forgiveness is complex and messy and doesn't always look like reconciliation. But most importantly, I've learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. Last month, I finally accepted Charlotte's invitation. I went back to Cascade Falls, back to the resort. She'd reserved the Penthouse suite for me again. A full week, completely complimentary. I brought 2 friends from my support group. We spent the days hiking, the evenings by the fire sharing our stories, and the nights in comfortable beds knowing we were safe. On the last evening, Charlotte joined us for dinner. We toasted to survival, to strength, to the unexpected kindness of strangers who become friends. As I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the sun set behind the mountains one last time, I thought about everything that had happened in this place. The betrayal, the fear, the fight, but also the kindness, the resilience, the victory. That night in the hotel lobby, my children thought they'd broken me. They thought they could humiliate me into submission, manipulate me into giving up everything I'd worked for. They were wrong. The lobby was never my bed. I belonged in the penthouse, not because of luxury or status, but because I deserved dignity and peace. And now, a year later, I finally understood what that meant. It meant knowing my worth. It meant refusing to be diminished. It meant fighting back against injustice, even when it came from family. It meant building new relationships with people who actually valued me. It meant letting go of people who couldn't. I don't know what the future holds with my children. Maybe Benjamin and I will slowly rebuild something real. Maybe Patricia and I will find our way to more than surface-level texts. Maybe Thomas will someday find the courage to reach out. Or maybe not. And I'm learning that either outcome is okay, because I'm not waiting in any more lobbies. I'm not making myself small to fit into other people's cruelty. I'm not accepting betrayal just because it comes wrapped in family ties. That night, when Charlotte handed me those penthouse keys, she gave me more than an upgrade. She gave me a reminder of what I deserved. And once you remember your worth, you can never unsee it. So to anyone listening who's ever been betrayed by family, who's ever been manipulated or diminished or made to feel small, I want you to hear this. You deserve the penthouse. You deserve dignity. You deserve people who treat you with respect and kindness. And if you're sitting in a lobby right now, metaphorically or literally, waiting for people who will never value you, I'm here to tell you what Charlotte told me. Come with me. You deserve better than this. The ending isn't always happy. My family is fractured. Some relationships are beyond repair. There are days when that loss still takes my breath away. But I'm free. I'm strong. And I know who I am now. The lobby was never going to be my bed. Because sometimes the worst betrayal cracks you open just enough to let the light back in. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Sharing these stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles, so if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this, please share it with them. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, no matter what you're facing right now, you deserve dignity, respect, and kindness. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. Until next time, take care of yourself. You're stronger than you know.